Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Let's face it, the future is now. We're living in a connected cyber society, and we need to stop ignoring it or pretending that it's not affecting us. Join us as we explore how humanity arrived at this current state of digital reality and what it means to live amongst so much technology and data. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impacts of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io. BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com.
Marco.
Sean.
1, 2, 3, NFT. 1, 2,
and web.
And web.
And
web 3. Yes, there you go.
Web 3. I haven't figured out the 2 yet.
Skills, but yeah.
I'm on the beta. I'm on the beta version. I'm still in
1 and
1969.
no idea what NFT is.
Well, you know, Sean, my relation with the acronyms is not the best, and you guys in cybersecurity you're fluent in acronyms, and I just sometimes I have to search it as we're you speak with that.
That's right.
And that's what we do here. This is not redefining cybersecurity, Sean. It's not your cup of tea, but it is, because you have been part of many conversations in redefining
cup of NFT
society. Cup of NFT, NHL, NFL,
NHL. I like the NHL too.
All right. Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. So what are we talking about here today is something that, as many other things, we read headlines. If somebody read about technology or follow technology account, cryptocurrencies, NFTs, Web 3.0, and we would like to know today a little bit of the basic of what is this Web 3.0? Why is it? Is it like, a new Terminator? Is it a new version of the Terminator? Or is something that is actually is not as scary and it's going to help us to have a better internet? I have no idea. Do you, Sean?
I know enough to be dangerous, and I don't like to be dangerous. I want to be safe.
Okay.
So we've asked somebody to help. Or
let's play
actually
safe.
somebody let's play safe. Somebody offered to help, and we're like, yes, please help us understand this
come
mess.
On. We were like, Connor, come on.
Connor Borrego, he's with us. He's probably wondering how and when do I get to join this conversation.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to enter. Marco, Sean, you guys have this great rapport, and it's kind of hard to interrupt.
That's right.
We take these 2 minutes where people are like, okay, what the hell are they talking about? This is not even the weirdest one, just to be honest with you. I mean, this was pretty linear. Okay. But this is the time that we pass the ball to you, we pass the mic to you, or what they call it, the pack. Yeah, how about that? We'll pass you the pack. And you introduce yourself. And again, the topic, Web 3.0, NFTs, NHL, and all those acronyms. So welcome to the show. A little bit about yourself.
Thanks so much for having me, both of you. So like you said, I'm Connor Borrego. I'm based out of Kansas City, Missouri, and I have a startup called UniPro. It is a crypto wallet for your social media data, and I can get into that, but it's related to NFTs and Web3. But primarily what I'm doing is I'm helping musicians open up new streams of revenue as well as helping them to grow their audience and increase their visibility online. My background is that I went to the University of Michigan. I studied political science and entrepreneurship. Indirectly, that led me into advertising technology, where I ended up at Google, and I was coaching startups deploy anywhere between $500,000 and $5 million a month on their advertising spend. And ultimately, because I worked with a lot of small businesses and had to tell them no, it kind of turned me off quite a bit to working there, and I set off on my own. I also got a master's during my time at Google with background in data science for business intelligence. And so that's kind of where this project all started for me. But I know we're here to talk about Web3, NFTs, blockchain, everything about this emerging technology, which, I am certainly no expert on, but I am working with it day to day. So, I definitely have a good visibility on it compared to most people, I would say. But let's start by tackling the really ugly acronym in the room, which is NFT, short for non-fungible token. And once you get past that super cumbersome, name or string of words, as we were saying, cybersecurity professionals love their acronyms, but it seriously is just a serial number for a piece of media that lives on the internet. And it just happens to be in this sort of decentralized internet powered by the blockchain, which would be, you could consider as a competitor to cloud-based technologies like Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud. What Web3 is ultimately getting at is that Web2 companies, as they're known, like Facebook and Google, make the majority of their money by reselling consumer data and small business data for a profit. And Web3 is saying, if there was a way for us to return ownership of the data back over to the user, they would either be able to choose to opt into that monetary system or remain private while they're operating on the internet, without losing any of the modern convenience of the internet and the applications that are provided upon it. So that's kind of, for me, how I see Web3 technologies, is a reinvention of the way we interact with applications. Instead of me logging into Facebook and having all of my data preloaded there, I would log into it every time with something like a USB that had all my data on it, but still allowed me to use the application and share that with my friends, family members, and coworkers, or whomever else I might be interacting with on their platform.
Well, let's scratch everything. Let's talk about music instead. How about that? No, I'm kidding. I mean, but we could because I really like that, what you mentioned about what you do with musician, because we love that. So maybe another conversation. Let's stick with the Web 3.0. So from what you said, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, why not? Why not having my own data? Why not bring it with me?
Why not? Ask Facebook. Why not?
Well, exactly. So here you go. Like some people, there's two sides of this. Some people are like, yay, wonderful, great manifesto. Where do I sign? Let's go there. Other are like, no, it's just marketing. And I can name a couple of names that tweet a lot. One of them, Elon, and said, it's just all marketing. So where does the truth lie?
So I think it's like with any technology, right? When we're taking it to market, there's a lot of things that go wrong because people are experimenting with the way in which they can make money off of it. So I think with what we're seeing with NFTs today, right, they're treated as these digital collectibles or a registry for recording physical collectibles or high value assets to a public notary service, which is the blockchain. And so because of the non-fungible token, the NFT, right, we have this tool that we can use to have a crowdsourced version of verifying ownership of that digital asset that doesn't necessarily compromise, the person who is actually behind that ownership, only if they choose to showcase that they're the owner. It's their choice. But the data itself is secure because of the blockchain protocol that's being used to essentially encrypt the data and register it to this shared database that we're all working off of. And so this is a really powerful tool for software developers because the majority of the applications, software systems they're building today are built up off of these unique identifiers. But the unique identifiers are unique to each individual organization, whereas the data that's being recorded might be shared across multiple organizations. So there's some struggle with coordinating that if you're a small business owner per se, and you're using multiple different software applications, but you're trying to identify which ones are driving value for your business and which ones aren't. You have to find a way to bring all of that data intelligence together. And that's a very cumbersome process that requires a unique skill set that a lot of small business owners don't necessarily have today. But getting back to your main question, which is, is this all Fugazi in a way, right? There are a lot of bad actors in the space currently. And so some are saying that regulation needs to come in order to kind of tamp down on sort of the Ponzi schemes that are almost emerging from these collectibles that are being traded up in sort of a mimetic fashion. But there are others that are saying that, that is, allowing people to congregate, to come together, to share value in new novel ways that they haven't before. And so it's kind of increasingly difficult to distinguish sincere projects from insincere projects in the space. And so regulation could potentially stifle some amount of innovation there. But I think ultimately...
Connor, quickly, isn't it supposed to be unregulated? Isn't that like the promise of, well, certainly the blockchain? That is the promise of the
technology, but yeah. Sean, you're absolutely right. That's the promise of the technology. I think the reality of the world we live in isn't necessarily always in line with our ambitions. And so what you'll see is platforms that, and maybe this is a discussion to go into, but I always have this dilemma around proof of stake versus proof of work, which I think proof of work protocols, which are the very energy intensive ones like Bitcoin, that people are always talking about, the emissions related, the energy consumption that goes into securing that network. But a lot of that security protocol is what enables the decentralized mechanism, whereas some of the competing alternatives, like the concept of proof of stake, is all about delegating basically your validation process to a third party, which would be introducing another intermediary to provide security to the network. So I don't really understand how proof of stake necessarily is an improvement on our existing database systems because it seems like a roundabout way to accomplish the same thing. And ultimately, I think that there's a lot of valid criticism on the proof of work side of things because of the energy intensive nature of securing that network. But at the same time, it serves a valid purpose, which is ensuring that users have control and trust over that data and that they don't have to rely on a third-party intermediary. But that's just around governing the data that's being stored and how it's being stored and how it's being processed. I think where regulation probably is more realistically going to come into play is more in the intermediary platforms that are bringing consumers onto the networks. While consumers have the capability to generate their own keys, private and public, in order to operate with the blockchains directly, I think that there is a technological literacy that isn't like necessarily within reach for the average consumer, and that they're going to require intermediaries to kind of hold their hands and onboard them, something like a Coinbase. And in those instances, with a centralized party like a business providing those services to consumers, you could very easily see regulation emerging as a result of that. And with some high profile, blow-ups with a lot of these centralized finance platforms that are, basically facilitating the sale and exchange of decentralized tokens, you're kind of seeing calls or reasons for that because they did things that banks are required to do that they're operating much like a bank, but not doing, and led to the financial risk that is now falling backwards on them because it was like their fundamental assumption is we'll be in a bull market forever. The numbers are only ever going to go up, so we don't have to consider the downside. And now we're seeing the repercussions of what happens when the numbers go down, and real consumers are being hurt by their lack of planning or risk mitigation.
So one comment and then one question. The comment is, you mentioned your background is in political science, so it's mine. Mm-hmm. So when you say, we're gonna take down the government because fuck the government. But then we're gonna need a government anyway. So we're just gonna go ahead and rebuild it because we need another social contract or another entity that controls society. So that's a never-ending story. Like after a revolution, usually we just go into something else, hopefully better, but it's still gonna be really related. So that's a comment. Feel free to add on that. My other one is, as you mentioned, the user may already be quite confused right now from this conversation, and we're putting another man, woman, something in the middle. Mm-hmm. So we facilitate that. So don't we risk to just, again, transfer the power from who has the power now to someone else that has the power? And what does it really mean, honestly, for me and you and anyone else that is going to use the internet in a different way?
Mm-hmm. So I actually hear both your questions as kind of wrapped up in being the same in some ways.
Made it easy. Yeah.
I appreciate you phrasing it multiple ways because it helps me think through this. So I want to say that I don't feel like I can publicly say fuck the government or whatever, even though that might be a viewpoint that I espouse at times. But
it was more a punk statement for me. It wasn't really like,
I respect it and appreciate it. So, I don't know where I stand on those things, but I do know that like the government is more likely to meddle and get involved with something that is harming consumers that are under their care currently. And while decentralized internet does make this promise that we could, facilitate our entire economy using a system like this, independent of the government, I think there are other government services that exist in the real world that can't necessarily be replicated online. And so there's going to be some sort of medium ground, and I'm not sure what that looks like. But I have my own vision for what that could be, and I'd be happy to share that, which is I see the point of if everything is a balance between maximizing decentralization and maximizing centralization, right, to either have complete control over a system or allow chaos and a natural structure to emerge, then the question becomes, how do we find the balancing point where we can maximize the points of decentralization? And so I think that a parallel that exists in our current economy that works kind of well to that effect are community banks. And I think community banks do a lot of good for basically the local communities in which they operate because they help small businesses access loans and funding that's propped up on the economy of the local community and the community which banks with them. Now, I think there are a lot of shortcomings of that system currently, like essentially how old a lot of their technology is and the types of things they can offer their customer, which is not competitive compared to what national or international banks are able to offer. But I think that if we were able to conceive of a system where these community banks provided digital asset custody and digital asset management to their members, we could actually maximize these points of centralization to create a decentralized distribution that's based on local populations. And what that would require is local banks to hire data scientists and different cybersecurity professionals to come in and essentially take over the custody management of users' digital assets and provide them a familiar, password-based login process. But they act as intermediaries. And by not centralizing all of that data into one location, while isolated communities could potentially be attacked, there'd be a lot more capability, I think, in that, or a lot more resiliency in that system to restore any loss or damages that occur. And I think we'd also be able to prevent a lot of errors that consumers and users are likely to make in a system where they're required to keep track of this super important password that's hard to remember, and basically avoid the financial ruin that would come from losing a password like that. Because if all of your systems locked up in one vault online and you lose the password, that doesn't seem like a very efficient system to me either. And so I think, that's just my idea of how I would approach a problem like that. But I'm also a big proponent of, the power of local governments to actually affect change in communities compared to, sort of policy at the federal level.
So Connor, can you take me on a journey, and maybe, I don't know if journey is the right way to put it, but I'm trying to map what you just described to somebody like my dad and his life. Maybe,
sure.
I won't use his examples, but anyway, let's just say there's a person, they have a house. There's a physical deed of owning that house, right? That's the physical world of that. Somebody might have savings. Somebody might own gold. Somebody might have a collector piece of art. Somebody might have a watch that's appreciated to $100,000.
Sure.
These things that we have around us, we might choose to put some in a safe deposit box. We might put some in a safe at home. We might, I don't know, other places, right? Where do you store your deeds? I don't know. So I guess how does that equate to what you're describing from a digital asset perspective? What's the opportunity for the general consumer to do something in the digital world that replaces what they're doing, or perhaps augments and supplements what they're doing?
So I would say that I think it augments stuff. And so if a person like your dad, just to use the physical deed as an example, a physical deed is, one of one, right? But if you lose that deed, there's probably someone else who's got your recorded ownership so that you could get another copy of it, and that's usually I think it's the local county that usually records that, but I'm not good on real estate, so I'm not entirely sure. But, it would just provide you another avenue to record that ownership in the case of the deed. But for someone like your dad, I wouldn't be surprised if he was on Facebook, because I know that a lot of people are on Facebook, and that doesn't, tend to span any particular generation. And I think that digital assets, when defined in the context of normal assets, is very narrow. But when you think about digital assets being sort of your breadcrumb trail of activity online, if you think about each individual bit, it becomes sort of cumbersome and hard to imagine. But if you think of that as culmination of your activity online as your digital identity, that is an asset that's financially valuable. And we know this because we can look at the data economy, or even just the subsection of the data economy that I'm familiar with, the advertising economy. And we know that the advertising economy generates hundreds of billions of dollars a year on the sale of your digital identity in order to place advertisements in front of you. And right now, those systems, kind of operate where they're utilizing your digital asset, one, without your consent, but two, they're not even really cutting you in on it. They're providing access to their platform, which is more of a mechanism for them to farm and collect that data from you than anything. And so I think for someone like your dad, it'd be like, I don't know if it's only $2,000 a year, like the media tends to quote. I think that, really your digital identity is probably worth tens of thousands of dollars a year to each individual. And I don't know about you, but your dad, I'm sure, could utilize an extra couple $1,000s a year, probably even just in his portfolio, or, wherever else he would want to redistribute that earnings from the income of his digital asset. And I think that's true of most consumers today.
So let me add to that. Instead of my dad, that doesn't even want to put a credit card online, but he's pretty good with the iPad, so I give it that. So you're in Europe, and you got this pop-up window all the time. Kind of annoying, because they make them annoying on purpose. It's kind of like a dark user interface, right? It's like, well, do you want us not to sell this stuff? There's a right to be deleted, forgotten, whatever you want to call it. So I'm envisioning in this Web 3.0 where you have your identity, you log out from Facebook, and your data is not there anymore.
So
I'm simplifying it a little too much, and then I go and log in somewhere else, and here you have my data, but you can only see it while I am on it, and then there you go. I'm disappearing again. Is it something like that?
I would say it's pretty close to that, basically. But in the moment in which you're going on that platform, right, and sharing that data directly with Facebook, they would then potentially have the ability to save it to their servers. So nothing really changes in that specific instance. Now, what could change, though, is let's say Facebook was willing to actually pay you for that data, right? When you logged on the platform, you wouldn't have to necessarily share your entire demography with them. You could just be like, nope, here's my user profile. That's really the only thing you need to link to my posts. You don't get to know anything else about me. And you could shield that information because the only thing that would be required is your Facebook username or your Facebook unique ID in order to map any and all content you were producing to put on that platform.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of your information beyond essentially the breadcrumb trail of browsing, you need to layer it with additional information to give your data context so they can better understand why it is you're taking the behavior that you're taking on their platform. And so if you're withholding that, it wouldn't necessarily live in their system. Now, they might have legacy data about you because you can't really take that back. Maybe in Europe you can because of the laws there. But in the United States, that's not really an option and unlikely to ever be one.
Yeah. No, or as you said, they could say, well, I'll give you $10 for each piece of data you give me. And that's at least I get paid for giving you my data, right?
Well, we already trade our identity for coffees and things like that, so may as well get that.
Yeah, there are some horrible stories there already. And I always make the joke that, somebody steal your identity. I mean, how many times, what, are you going to change your identity? It's like it's out there. So, but it's nice to think that could be a possibility where like, okay, at least I'm somehow in control of it.
Well, I wanted to stick with the identity as an asset for a moment, just because it's not, I think you touched on a little bit the context of what you're doing, your behavior. So it's not just my address and that I like certain bands or that I like hockey or whatever. It's every single action I'm taking, how long I stay on a page, where my eyes are tracking on the page if I'm going through an iPad or something like that. All of that metadata as well. And I don't know, can you help folks understand just that whole concept a little bit? That it's everything about what they're doing, not just their personal information that they would normally think they have that's on their credit cards or their IDs or whatever.
Absolutely. But essentially, when you're logged into an application, right, the first thing that they want to know are different identifiers about yourself, because what they're able to do is to group you into people like you. And so it starts with your demographic information. Where do you live? How much money do you make? What race and ethnicity? What level of education? There's some pretty standard stuff, but I think the Census Bureau does a great job of covering kind of the major buckets. Once you have that information, what each different platform or app or website that you use has is a context for why you're using it. So in the case of Twitter, for example, it's a microblogging platform, but it's one that's owned by Twitter. So that allows you to put out, anywhere between 1 and 240 character idea, maybe in succession, maybe with an image, maybe with a video. But what they also have is all of the different individual users that you're connected with. And of those users, which ones, when you share their posts, when you comment on their posts, when you click on their posts, how much time you spend scrolling your feed, every single time you refresh to get another 20 tweets on your screen. They know, and they're keeping count of that. And the reason for all of this is they're trying to assess how much value they can earn from all of those activities that you're doing within their environment, and how much they can earn in context to your digital identity, right? because that demographic information that you bring is kind of the bulk of your digital identity, as well as the rest of the web and internet that you interact with. But with concern to the platform that you're on at that specific moment, right? Twitter makes money by selling ads to advertisers, and they're trying to place those ads in front of you. So the more efficiently they can do that, the more money they make, because they can charge high prices to get that ad in front of you. And they can use all of this data about how you're interacting with the platform to figure out what that's worth and whether or not you're likely to care that that ad's in front of you, because the advertiser is only going to want to spend money with Twitter is if their ad works. So they have to be able to make sure that they can get their advertising message in front of the right audience and the right people. And that comes down to, are you an engaged user on the platform who's likely or has in the past interacted with ads? And then do you fit the demographic profile of who this advertiser is trying to target? And so it takes that intersection of both those data points, the context of being on Twitter and what you do on Twitter, plus your personal background, in order for them to effectively put that ad in front of you to earn a profit.
Yeah, no, I think you explained that very, very well. And I think that, what Sean was hinting at is not just who you are, but it's what you do and how you can change as you mature, your tastes change. Your data today is not the same data that you have 10 years from now. Maybe you're a different person in a way. Mm-hmm. So just to wrap around and turn around in the circle and reconnect. So what would change on the Web 3.0 of what you just described?
So there are a couple of different facets that could change. None of them are guaranteed to change. And I think this gets back to what you were saying earlier about, like, is this really going to be a new internet? Is this going to democratize things or not? And so when you look at, for example, Twitter, right, and Elon Musk's desire to purchase Twitter, he wants to do that so it can be the first, blockchain native social media platform with, 400 million users. But ultimately, he would turn Twitter into your crypto wallet for your personal information, right? And the first platform that would be built would be the Twitter protocol. And Twitter would allow you to do everything that Twitter allows you to do today. But if you wanted to, and someone created, the Zuckerberg platform, which was just a satirical version of Facebook, maybe you could take all of your tweets and plug them into this other app. You could take all of your followers and plug it into this other app. And if they come to that other application, they wouldn't have to look it up and find you. They would already be following you. And so it's just more about this idea that instead of the data belonging to the platform, the data belongs to you, and you choose what platform you want to display it on. And in that choice, you would probably be agreeing to whatever the financial monetization, basically the process in which that platform monetizes. And so you would get the choice to whether or not to use that platform in that way. And so maybe they're paying you for those tweets, or they're paying you to show ads on your tweets, or maybe they're just paying you to access your demographic information so they could do exactly what they're doing now. But it would be without the friction of being so tied to Twitter that if Twitter decided, no, we don't want you on here anymore, you wouldn't lose all of your data or your audience, because that's incredibly valuable to you. That's a part of your digital identity that you don't actually own today. And a lot of people call this your social graph. And so this is one of the ways that it could make your social graph more resilient while you're operating online.
I like that. Sorry, just a quick comment. Yeah. I like that, to have people become knowledgeable and realize that they do carry a value. It's not just something they give away. It's something that they should have. So sorry, Sean, go for it.
No, there's so many questions. I don't even know where to go. So much to cover. We're gonna have to have another conversation. Let's start here. You're talking about these platforms, and then Web 3.0, it isolates the person's assets from the platform so it can transfer around. If I summarize that well enough, which is different than the data being on a platform and perhaps even multiple platforms and non-platforms, where I guess my point is a lot of our data is just on the current web, right? Not in Twitter. And there are companies that that make money scouring the web for our information to provide credit scores or to provide loans and things like that, right? So I'm wondering, how does that change in the web?
So I think, again,
do they coexist, the two networks?
I think on some level, yes, they will coexist. And I think that there is going to be this legacy or transition period between Web 2 and Web 3 that's going to exist, I don't know, at least for the foreseeable future, right? Because, like I said earlier, Facebook and Google aren't going to willingly give up their data. They have no reason to. And even if we're talking about, the third-party companies that make tons of money by reselling and buying data in illicit manners and coming up with all sorts of, I don't know, I would say psychologically manipulative ads to get users to give up, more information and not even realize it. I think that industry is going to continue to persist in some ways. But if users were to choose to operate solely from a browser like Brave, right? I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Brave browser, but
now.
Nice. The Brave browser, right? It itself is a crypto wallet, and it acts as sort of this shield while you're going to a lot of these Web 2 properties. Now, any information that you put willingly onto their platform isn't going to be protected by this, right? But your IP address and things like tracking you between site to site, that's where the crypto wallet and Web3 can add immediate value for people today. Is that that type of tracking mechanism. And that is where quite a bit of these third-party data points are being sourced from presently, in addition to sort of like those, I don't know, phishing style advertising placements that sort of manipulate users, or viral trends that sort of manipulate users in ways they don't realize. But I think what will happen, right, is that users are going to pick and choose what properties on the internet they're willing to share what amounts of information with. And I think we'll simplify what that looks like to a way where it's not cumbersome and, sort of like a burden on the consumer to do those things. But Brave browser is kind of giving a peek into what that could look like in the future. Because what they're doing is they're wrapping that data for you and providing a shield when you're interacting with these other properties. And so I think that the more that it acts as a shield that you can then plug into the properties, you can then have control over where that data is going to exist. But because the algorithms that power the internet today are so dependent on recency bias, they need a constant stream of new data about you. And so if you start operating with this wallet shield sort of between you and your information, over time, what they know about you and what they're able to predict about you and how that influences things like your credit score are going to diminish, because it's going to go outside the bounds of being a statistically significant data point for being a predictor of any of those things that they're trying to use it for. And so I think that, as people opt into a Web3 system, we will slowly transition away from that. But what would that look like in practicality? It may just look like websites that require you to log in with some minimum amount of information with your wallet before you're able to access the content. And they may even do that in exchange for some amount of money. But ultimately, it's going to probably create gates around the internet, and hopefully it's not paid to play gates, but you'll probably see quite a bit of that as well.
I love that, and it kind of makes me think about the change that could happen on a societal level. And I'm connecting in my last question. I like what you said about the communities that can come into place into help, like decentralize, which just remind me the original internet. All right, one computer goes down, the other works, right? So in a way, like this community, I'm not going to say go down, but it could be a little node that we can adjust and fix. And I'm thinking like, I like that thought, because we always think about globalizing everything. And I think that is important to bring it back to be global, but at the same time to be local. So my last question is about small businesses. I feel like the small businesses, and I know you're passionate about that. So right now, the small business, if it wants to use the data, has to go through their Facebook, their Google, and pay them money to do an AdWord campaign or whatever it is. I can see with you carrying your own data around and make it valuable, maybe can we bring back into play the small businesses to actually have a role into this as well? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I actually think small businesses stand to benefit the most from this system. And I think about it in two stages. So there's one or two parts. So there's one that you already hinted on around the advertising data. And this is the one that got me to quit Google and made me so upset while I was there. But ultimately, the advice I would need to give to the majority of small businesses is don't advertise on Google, go directly to Yelp. And the reason I'd say that is because Yelp has scale amounts of data that allows them to buy up their customers, the small businesses customers, for 30% less, right? And so that is a huge amount of money to a small business owner in terms of their advertising efficiency, to have to pay a premium to access the same customers simply because they do not have the scaled data sets behind it to support any sort of statistically significant predictions in the ad algorithm, and then have to be paying that premium as a result. And so I couldn't necessarily tell them not to advertise with Google and just go straight to Angie's List, go straight to Yelp, because it'll be cheaper for you in the long run, even though that is the truth, just by nature of the job role I was in. And so I found that frustrating. So one of the major things that I saw is if, for example, a bunch of carpenters, maybe not even local, but like distributed nationally, decided to create a website together and put all of their lead form data onto one website and just call it, I don't know, did I say contractor or electrician? I'm not sure, but like, let's say it was electrician, but all these electricians put all of their ads on one platform together, and then they distributed the leads, naturally, they could basically save 30% on their advertising, even though they're supplying their competitors with intelligence. But I think that extends to all of their business operations. And this is kind of what I was getting back to, was if we are utilizing Web3, which is this idea that you own and manage your data, right? You need a place to centralize it. And this is something that's emerging for small businesses today, is the idea of business intelligence systems that connect their different software platforms together so that they can have a holistic view of their digital operations. And so advertising online is just one small part of their entire business that has a bunch of different softwares and digital components that need to come together. And that crypto wallet that would be managing their business data could put that into a single place, and it would serve the same purpose as a business intelligence warehouse, because you could create standard data sets for standard functions that all small businesses have, like a CRM, or like your advertising platforms for channel analysis. You could be looking at your accounting software, right? Like, you're going to have pretty much standardized financial statements at the end of the year. We can pretty much standardize what those inputs look like for a lot of people. And so often you're just choosing software as a skin that sits over top of that data. And where that becomes valuable is, again, not just in the advertising use cases, but all the places where, we could pool small businesses' data together for a collaborative approach to intelligence, because it takes, massive scale volume in order to derive insights from it that small businesses just simply can't do on their own. And we see this, from basically people like McKinsey, who go out there and essentially do this type of work for large businesses who have the data sets to kind of, do stuff like that. But crypto provides a new mechanism for these small businesses to competitively pool their intelligence in a way that doesn't necessarily harm their operations, but does improve the efficiency of them, or could, theoretically at least.
Co-op. I love it. Co-op farmers, right? That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, co-op. Yeah, I like that. All right. So, first of all, thank you for clarifying a lot of things and for making us think. I've thought about things that I haven't got there before. So thank you for that. That's our goal with our conversation. We always say if we may not have answer for our audience, but if we make them think, I think we had a good conversation, which I strongly believe we did. So we didn't talk about NHL, we didn't talk about NFTs, but we talk a lot about the Web 3.0. So if you want to come back, I would love to have you back to talk about those other topics. And up to you.
I would love to come back. I really enjoyed the conversation with both you, Marco, Sean. Like, this has been awesome. So, I mean, as long as you guys don't think I'm ranting too much, I'd be more than happy to try to take my turn at explaining some of that other stuff in more detail.
Absolutely not. I mean, this is still part of the recording. So at this point, we have your word. We invited you. We gotta have you back. Also, I really want to hear your thoughts on NFTs and the music industry and what Sean and I are very passionate about arts in general. So that's one of the things we like about NFTs. But right now we're going to close this one. We will have links to your social media. If you have some resources you want to share, we can put it in the podcast notes. So feel free to do that. And to everyone else, thank you for listening to this conversation. We hope you get something out of it. Thank you, Connor. Thank you, Sean. And we'll redefine society next time. And then the next time, and then the next time.
It's TFN 3, 2, 1.
There you go. Some kind of acronym. All right. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
BugCrowd's award-winning platform combines actionable contextual intelligence with the skill and experience of the world's most elite hackers to help leading organizations identify and fix vulnerabilities, protect customers, and make the digitally connected world a safer place. Learn more at bugcrowd.com. Black Cloak provides concierge cybersecurity protection to corporate executives and high net worth individuals to protect against hacking, reputational loss, financial loss, and the impacts of a corporate data breach. Learn more at blackcloak.io.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.